I Run on Beer here with a quick review of a delicious new brew. This is Unrefined Shugga from Lagunitas Brewing Company. Cheers, y'all. How's it going? I am here with a beer review, which is something I have not done in quite some time, but have an exciting beer to try. That is the Unrefined Shugga Barley Wine from Lagunitas Brewing Company. Very excited to try this beer. This beer was actually sent to me for the purpose of reviewing, but not from Lagunitas themselves. It was actually sent to me from the sugar company whose unrefined pure sugarcane was used in the brewing process for this beer. And that is this company right here. I believe it's pronounced Dolce. They make panela, which is a pure sugar made from, like I said, sugar cane, unrefined, no processing or anything like that. Literally just the ground down sugar cane into the sap, and then the dried out sap is actually what gives you the sugar. And if you are interested in trying this sugar, I do have a discount for them. You can see that down below. The code is 22 I Run on Beer for 22% off of any purchase from their Amazon store. But all of that being said, let us dive into the beer review itself. As I mentioned, this is a barley wine, perfect in the winter months. It's got a whopping 10% ABV, so perfect for keeping you warm in those cold winter months, especially now. It has been in like the teens and 20s here, sometimes negative with the wind chill. So very much looking forward to this. I actually did try this one already. This was the first beer that I decided to taste post dry January, so this was my February 1st celebratory beer, and can vouch for its deliciousness. But like I said, 10% ABV barley wine style beer. As you can see as I pour it, it is a super amber. It's actually a lot lighter in color than what I was expecting when I first poured this beer, or when I first poured the first one of these beers I tried. You can see a real nice amber color, super, super clear. I'm used to barley wines being a little bit darker, almost like maroonish in tint, like reddish in tint. But yeah, it's got a really nice color to it. Also, the aroma coming off of the beer is immediate. One thing that I said when I first tasted this beer, which still holds true, pouring it, it smells a lot more like an IPA than what I would have anticipated. It is loaded with some delicious traditional IPA hops. You kind of get like that piney aroma from hops, kind of like Christmas tree aroma. Again, perfect for this time of year. Again, another thing that I was surprised about, that I would expect more from like an IPA than I would a traditional barley wine. A lot of times for those higher ABV beers, the head on the top, the foam at the top, dissipates pretty quickly. Something about the alcohol concentration, it just eats through that foam. But this one, it keeps a nice frothy head right on top of the beer. It just looks a lot more refreshing in the glass. But let's go ahead and give this a taste. Oh, and it is just so good. And similar to like what I said with the aroma, it tastes a lot more like an IPA than what I was expecting. Again, a lot of that pininess. Not necessarily bitter, definitely subtle bitterness, but tastes a lot more like I would compare it to a Dogfish Head 90-minute IPA, like a stronger IPA almost, but very, very, very good. It's got a little bit of sweetness, but not overly sweet, even though a ton of sugar goes into making this beer. Most of that sugar is devoured by the yeast, which is what gives us the higher alcohol content. But even still, it almost has like a caramely vanilla flavor that's almost like tacky, or I want to say syrupy, but I feel like it, at least in my mind, syrupy gives it a bad connotation. It's not syrupy like an artificial sweetness, but just like the way that it feels in your mouth. It's a very, very subtle sweetness, but you just get like a little bit of a gumminess with the beer that personally I find incredibly refreshing. I also did look up some of the tasting notes on Lagunitas' website. There's a ton of flavor profiles on there. A lot of the stuff isn't coming through for me, but again, I have a very unrefined palate, I would say, when it comes to beer tasting. But one thing that I think is coming through more on this tasting than on my initial one was they said that using the panela, just the type of the sugar that they use, gives it almost like some of the flavor profiles of like a molasses. Again, not the sweetness, but there's almost like a smokiness on the back end, if that makes sense. It's not overpowering at all. You would almost miss it. I feel like the only reason I'm noticing it is because I saw it on the website and I'm just like trying to keep a nose out and my taste out for some of the things that it mentioned. But it's not on the initial sip. It's almost on like the exhale after taking a sip of the beer, almost that secondary taste that you get from exhaling the beer as well. But just the slightest hint of smokiness, which again, I think just goes to round out this kind of perfect winter warmer beer profile. It also goes down so much easier than I was expecting. Again, for a barley wine or a 10% beer, this is just incredibly refreshing. I'm personally a huge fan of IPAs, so this really, especially like the piney IPAs in the winter, so this is exactly what I'm looking for. But this just goes down incredibly easy. There's not that kind of lingering bitterness that I'm used to with a higher ABV beer. And I would consider it somewhat dangerous because of how smoothly it goes down. Personally, I'm a huge fan of all of the variables that are going into this beer. Again, I'm usually not a barley wine fan, but I just feel like this is very uncharacteristic of some of the barley wines that I've had in the past. So a huge shout out to Lagunitas Unrefined Shugga. Very thankful that this was my first beer to break the dry January fast. Happy that I have some more to taste my way through as well, because this is just very delicious. And again, that perfect refreshment on a cold winter day. So if you are a fan of IPAs, even if you're not, it's not overwhelmingly bitter, it's not overpowering, so I think it's approachable for folks who maybe don't traditionally love IPAs. I would definitely give it a shot, but for me, it's the perfect combination of like the slight bitterness, the pininess from the hops, a little bit of sweetness from the sugar, and then kind of round it off with that like very much on the back end, very subtle smokiness. Really, really, really tasty beer and keeps me nice and warm in the winter. So I am gonna give this one, I'm going to say a 4 out of 5. I do think this is a beer that I would seek out to find again. I would definitely get a 6-pack of these to keep in the winter. I don't think I'm drinking more than 1, maybe 2 in an evening just because of the ABV. But if I'm looking for like a beer after work or just hanging out on the weekend, want something to kind of take the edge off or just relax, I think this is the perfect winter beer. So huge shout out to Lagunitas. Snag yourself some Unrefined Shugga. And again, if you want to try, where did I put the bag? That unrefined Panella Shugga from Dolce. Check them out. I'll put the code on the screen again as well. But just that unrefined Shugga available on their website or on their Amazon shop. And 22 I Run on Beer gets you that 22% discount. But thank you for tuning in for an uncharacteristic beer review. Happy to have another one to put out for you folks. If you enjoyed it, I hope you will comment down below. And as always, I will see you around. Cheers.